With the season coming to a close, now that it's week 14, and playoff implications are on the line, I felt that it was a great opportunity for us to now take a look at the NFC North standings and see what I feel like will end up being the case in terms of records and playoff implications. And to start off, I'm going to start with the Detroit Lions. So the Detroit Lions have a relatively hard schedule per se. However, it is very manageable given that the current state of their team. Before this upcoming game against Chicago, they did face a relatively easy Saints opponent and did have trouble maintaining a lead. However, they were able to manage and still win that game. Moving forward with the upcoming game against Chicago, I feel like that's a win in that sense, and they'll end up sweeping Chicago, unfortunately. And then moving on to Denver, I think that Denver will pose issues for them in terms of a defense. And given that Denver has found their stride in the end of the season, I think that it will be a huge test for them, especially this late in the season. And however, I still do believe that they will come with the win. If moving on to the other NFC North rival for them is Minnesota. Minnesota is the first of their two legs, and I would say that they split both of these. So the upcoming one on Christmas Eve, I would say that Minnesota wins just because it's at Minnesota and home court advantage, and I just feel like that just seems like a safe bet. Dallas is one of the hottest teams in the NFL, and it will be very difficult for the Lions, having had trouble with the Packers earlier this season, and also even having trouble against the Bears, which, to be honest, they should have lost that game, but still managed to win. Dallas is definitely at the peak of their ability right now, and I feel like they're a very huge team to overcome for Detroit, who doesn't have that much experience when it comes to beating tough opponents this year. I think that's an L. And finally, to cap off the end of the season for them, it's against Minnesota again, which I say that they will lose. Just because anything can happen near the end of the season, and I just feel like Minnesota will find a way to come up with the win, given the current state that they have Josh Dobbs at quarterback. I think that they will able to close out the season. That being said, I feel like the Detroit Lions will end 12-5, which is still very respectable, especially with the weak NFC conference as a whole, and so many playoff implications when it comes to a multitude of teams. And 12-5 is a very solid record, especially compared to last year, when the Lions were just eliminated the last game of the season, when the Seahawks won and had nothing to really play for against the Packers. I feel like overall they will have their chance to essentially take that next step and become a playoff team this year. Moving on to the Minnesota Vikings, however, they had a very rough season in general, and to be honest, the fact that when Kirk Cousins went down, it did pose a lot of issues for them, supposedly. However, with the addition of Josh Dobbs, and now that in week 14 that Justin Jefferson is coming back from IR, I feel like this team can definitely make some noise, especially since their upcoming opponents against Las Vegas, and it's at Las Vegas, so this shouldn't be a relatively easy win. And just to mention that their record currently is 6-6, so they are very well within the wild card hunt. And moving on to Cincinnati. Cincinnati did find their stride, even though they've had Joe Burrow out for the season with Jake Browning. And by that being said, I feel like they'll have a tough time per se to face this team, and I just don't see them facing and winning against this team who has improved their defense, improved their offensive ability with Jake Browning, and given our taste of what this Cincinnati defense and this Cincinnati offense can be like in the previous Monday Night Football game, I think that they're going to be an easy win for Cincinnati, and it would pose some issues for Minnesota, even with Justin Jefferson back. Moving on to the Detroit game, I think that Detroit is still going to win this game. As what I mentioned previously for the Detroit thing, I think that it's just another, they walk into Detroit and not into Detroit. They go home. It's a home game. They'll have a very easy time with that at a home court advantage. Then Green Bay, yes, Green Bay has definitely found their stride with the resurgence of Jordan Love in a year where Jordan Love isn't supposed to be necessarily this good already. And it was an evaluation year for sure. And I just don't think that Minnesota has that level of momentum that Green Bay has at this point of the season. That being said, it's a week-to-week league. Anything can change. But as of right now, I feel like Green Bay will win this game. And to cap off the season, I would say Detroit also wins this 2-game stretch against Minnesota. And from 6-6, I feel like the Minnesota Vikings will end with an 8-9 record, which isn't bad considering the amount of injuries and trials and tribulations that they had this season. Given that they started 0-4 or 0-3, I think, and they were able to still make a comeback, and with Kirk Cousins playing lights out as well. However, with Kirk Cousins going out with an injury for the rest of the season, Josh Dobbs has definitely taken a step. However, he does prove to be a journeyman quarterback and a backup for sure, which isn't sustainable down the line. So I feel like it's respectable that they end 8-9, and with many implications to what they'll do in the offseason. Moving on to the Green Bay Packers. After their win against the Chiefs, this season seems like it could just only continue to get better for the Packers. As a Bears fan, I genuinely despise that and really don't like it. However, being objective with this, I feel like their 6-6 record right now can only go up from there. Given that their slate of the games against New York Giants, Tampa Bay, Carolina, Minnesota, and then finally my team Chicago Bears at home in Lambeau Field, I feel like their schedule is very manageable. This is very, very manageable. Giants aren't doing much. Tampa Bay aren't as good as they used to be. Carolina is a tank bowl type team, still having only one win this season. Thank you, Carolina, for your pick. And then Minnesota, I'd say that this is like definitely one of their harder opponents in the schedule. However, I do see that given that it's a night football game, 31st, so New Year's Eve football game at night, I think that it will be a toss-up, but I just still give the edge to the Green Bay Packers. And then finally, to close out the season, I see that they sweep the Chicago Bears as well. Until I see improvement from the Chicago side, and with Jordan Love playing at the level he's playing, with Christian Watson, the Romeo Dobbs, the whole team, Matt LaFleur figuring out how to work this offense, I feel like they're gonna sweep the rest of the slate of games and end the season actually on a 5-game or 6-game winning streak at 11-6, which is a crazy good record considering the start that they had this season, where they were like, okay, we might not be good, and Jordan Love may not be the answer. However, Jordan Love ended up figuring out a lot of the kinks when it comes to the Matt LaFleur offense. And yeah, I guess it's another home run of a quarterback from the looks of it for the Green Bay Packers, and I just don't know how they keep getting away with it. And then finally, we got my Chicago Bears, and I will say this season has been nothing less of a disappointment. 4-8 is not what I was expecting when at this point of the season, but here we are. And this last 5 games after their current bye week, this past week 13, I feel like it's very manageable. However, it is still very difficult. With a lot of the questions lingering on the minds of executives within the Chicago Bears organization, it is tough to necessarily say what they're going to do moving forward. But these 5 games are very crucial when it comes to deciding what they want to do at the quarterback position. And wins do matter at the end of the day for this team. However, I will say that I predict that they will get swept by Detroit. They clearly should have won the last time that they faced Detroit. However, even with a 99% chance to win, they still managed to throw the game away and give Detroit another win. So I don't really see that changing much for this time, even though it's going to be played at home. Just until I see like consistency and the fact that we won against the Vikings the last game, I think that the coach Matt Eberflus needs to figure out how to win back-to-back games, which he still hasn't done. And without that, I don't see a possibility right now that the Chicago Bears will pull out a victory in Detroit. Similarly, Cleveland is going to be a tough match because their defense has been elite with Myles Garrett at the forefront. However, I do see us winning against Cleveland. Yeah, they're starting Joe Flacco and DTR depending on his health. Joe Flacco has been in the league for God knows how long. He's 38 years old. And yes, he did play really decently against the Rams. However, I don't think that's necessarily enough to consistently win against teams. And yet they still lost the game due to an arm punt by Joe Flacco. However, I do see the Bears winning this matchup, and I feel like it's a very sleeper pick, but I feel like Justin Fields and the offense will still be able to figure out a way to get that past that defense. I feel like the defense for Cleveland is kind of beat up right now and is not as healthy as it once was, but it's going to be definitely a tough game because it's at Cleveland. Then the next 2 bird teams, Arizona is not a great team. However, it doesn't mean that it's going to be an easy game. They do win against teams that they shouldn't be beating, like aka the Cowboys and the Steelers. So I will say this is still a win. And I also feel like a win against Atlanta is also imminent. And to close off, as much as I hate to say it, I think we're going to get swept by the Green Bay Packers. As much as it pains me to say it, it's at Lambeau, and as I said before, Jordan Love has shown that he is proving to be a quarterback that is there to stay for the Green Bay Packers and develop and get better over time. And I just don't think the Bears are ready yet to walk into Lambeau Field and take this win against Jordan Love and the Packers. We're just not there yet, and these stretch of games also are implications on whether or not Justin Fields is our quarterback going forward, or are we going to draft Caleb Williams or whatever quarterback we get at that spot, given that we have Carolina's pick at first overall, which I still hope that still stays at number 1, because that would be fantastic. Now, I feel like it's only fair that this record shows to be 7-10. I mean, that's pretty reasonable, and definitely an improvement from last season where the Bears finished 3-14 and ended the season with like a near 10-game losing streak. And while it did continue into the following season, I feel like this is still a great spot for us. 7 wins is still very respectable for this young Bears team, who are still trying to figure out the coaching staff and also the overall team direction. And I think that this is a great spot for them. Going to finally end with the final standings, I think that Detroit wins the division this year, with Green Bay surprisingly coming in second again. This is a crazy way to end the season. I feel like Detroit is on the rise. They've done so well when it comes to developing their team, building the team from the trenches, and the work paid off at the end of the day for them. And 12-5 is such a great way to instill your potential dominance down the line. The Packers being 11-6 is very surprising. It would have been surprising earlier in the season. However, I see with the current trajectory of Green Bay, I think that they're going to be still really good. Minnesota and Chicago will miss the playoffs still, given that the wild card spot is really hard to get into, and depending on how the other teams in the NFC fare, I don't know and don't believe that Minnesota and the Bears will get into the playoffs. And yeah, it just seems like the only difference that the NFC North has kind of seen is that Detroit is on top. Green Bay Packers are still relevant. The Bears still at the bottom of the league for now. Yeah, I mean, things change. This is all my predictions, and I just want to know, what do you guys think that will happen with the rest of the NFC North? Do you think that the Packers will go on a 5-game winning streak? What do you think the Bears will do? Do you think the Lions will continue their dominance this season, or will they fall off? Just let me know. And yeah, this has been the first video of the NFC North. Hopefully I make more videos on this, and thank you so much for watching.